Okay, this lesson is going to go over, or this video will go over the security section of central administration. So when you go to your central administration site and click on the security link, you're given 3 bullet points. You've got users, general security, and information policy. For users, you have manage the administration farm administrators group. That basically lets you set who is in the administrator group. So if you have more users you want to add in there, you can just click new and add the user. Put in their name and it'll add them to that group, and they have full control over the entire farm and any site collections underneath it. You can also approve or reject distribution groups. Um, SharePoint allows you, if you have incoming email set up, to set up distribution groups and have those go out to certain users. So you can create those, and then this would be where you, as a farm administrator, would approve or reject those. And then you can also specify the web application user policy. This is a little advanced, but basically what it is it lets you set for what zone you want what account and the username of that account and what permissions you want them to have in that web application. So that's a quick rundown. For general security, you can configure managed accounts. Managed accounts are accounts that are managed by SharePoint. If we go in and click on register managed account, it'll say put in the username and the password, and then you can set SharePoint. This is one of the cool things. Is a lot of issues we have in our organizations that I work with is that usually they have an automatic password change set, so that every 90 days that user is required to change their password. Well, you can have SharePoint automatically do that for you on the account. So whenever the policy expires, you would basically have SharePoint go in and automatically change the password for you, depending, and it can send out email alerts and let you know about all that stuff. But it basically lets you manage, set up managed accounts that SharePoint manages the passwords and everything else on. So service accounts are accounts that the service itself run with. So the farm account is, of course, a network service. We can register a new managed account for that service account. So without getting too far into it, basically any of these services like the application pool, the web application pool, the distributed cache, all these things will run under a specific account. And if you want to set those accounts to have certain permissions, I think the search service is on here. Yeah, server search. There's some practices you want to follow with that, like not giving it full farm access or farm administrator access, because then you start seeing issues with results that users that don't have full permissions can see because the full permissions account is running under there. So whenever you give it a lower permission, then it uses the user permission levels to search. That's probably the most complicated thing I've ever said in my life, but service accounts are use managed accounts to run services on SharePoint. Password change settings. This is where you can go in and configure that so you can send a notification to an email address. And then you can set the monitoring process. How many days before expiration do you want it to send the notification to that email address? And then password change wait time and number of retries before the timer fails. So it's just more management settings for the password change settings in SharePoint. Authentication providers. This has to do with how you want users to access your site. Now, if you're in an Active Directory, you can use claims-based and Windows authentication, or if you don't have Active Directory, you can do that because that's what we're using right here. But you specify what zone, so we could change claims-based authentication to be for the intranet zone, and then set maybe forms-based authentication to be for the extranet. So if you're not on the network and you want to be able to log in anyway, then you can set that up there. Manage trust. This is an interesting setup here, and I actually had to use this a while back. If you are running your site in HTTPS or SSL, you're going to need to add the certificate, the root certificate here to the trust, because otherwise your search service will not be able to crawl that information under the web application that's running SSL. So trust is where you upload those certificates. Antivirus settings is pretty self-explanatory. SharePoint doesn't really have any built-in antivirus stuff. It can do certain things and check things out, and you can set those settings here. I don't ever really use this. And you can set whether you want users to be able to download infected documents and all that stuff. But that's really all it has to do with. Blocked file types is a very useful tool. You can set which file types you want to allow to be uploaded to your site. So like, where is it? There's one in here. You can block printer files from being uploaded. You can block SOAP files, URLs, XAML. Okay, so you can set which files you want to be added. If I wanted to block PDFs, I would just put a new line item and enter in PDF. Okay, I don't want to do that because we're going to use PDFs later on in my lessons, but this is where you determine that. I think MP3 is on here. Let's see. It's not, but if you wanted to block MP3 uploads to SharePoint, this is where you would do it. So that's where you determine those. Let's see what else. Web part security. This is where you configure settings for web parts. Do you want users to be able to create connections between them where they can send data back and forth? Do you want them to be able to access the online web part gallery and scriptable web parts? Do you want to prevent them from adding them or allow them to add them? That's all it is. Just quick, dirty, simple security settings for those web parts. Self-service site creation has to do with whether you want to enable your users to go in and create a subsite themselves. So you go to the web application you want to do this on, and then you set whether you want to allow users to create their own site collections. Okay, you can choose a quota template, and then you can basically have all these other options for it. But that's where if you don't want your users to be able to create sites, you just want them to work within the sites you want and lock it down really tight, then this is where you would go and turn all that off. So let's talk about service applications. I think we went over this a little bit previously. Am I on the wrong page? We should be on security. Yeah, so there's two places you can enable this. One is here and one's in application management. So forgive me for getting off track there. So the other one is the other bullet point on here is information policy. You can configure the information rights management, and basically this page lets you configure that. If you don't want them to use IRM, which is integrated rights management, or if you want to use a rights management server or use a specific one that you specify, I don't ever turn it on. So it basically lets you prevent people from accessing files without permissions once they've been uploaded to a site. So you can set rights management. It's almost like DRM on video games, but you can set that up here. And then the information policy configuration page basically allows you to set up barcodes, auditing, and see how all of this stuff is set up. So you can go in, and if I wanted to look and find out more information on the barcodes, then we can do that. So you can determine how it wants to insert that on there. And the cool thing about barcodes, as we all know, is that they are OCR compatible. So if you scan this in and send it through Adobe, you can actually index it based on these barcodes. Not many people know about the barcoding feature in SharePoint. So that's basically everything for security. There's not too much to it. And again, like I said in the other videos, I'll go more in depth on a lot of these features in some future videos. But I just wanted to give you an overview. So when you click on the page, you've at least become a little bit more familiar with what all these things do. So I hope that was informative, and be sure to check out our other videos.